Hello, everyone. I am Luke Reinhardt. Welcome to Closing the Gap, a podcast dedicated to your growth. Brought to you by Wellspring Coaching Services and hosted by myself and my wife, Caty. You know, people have gaps that prevent them from growing. Our goal is to empower you to close those gaps by increasing your awareness, confidence, and clarity. Join us today as we help you close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Hello, everyone. It is season 1, episode 10. Good to have you guys with us today.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about discipline versus desire. We kind of mentioned it a little bit in our last podcast, and we just wanted to go a little deeper into that for you today. Discipline, as we mentioned in the last podcast, is the ability to force yourself to do something that you don't want to do, but you know that you should. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
Maybe some examples would be, I use the example of playing the guitar in the last episode where, you know, if you want to get good at playing guitar, you know, you're going to have to discipline yourself to practice the guitar according to the laws of the guitar, right? And so you don't necessarily want to practice sometimes, but you have this greater desire to get good at playing the guitar.
Yeah. You have to learn the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we could also apply this to like health and nutrition, right?
Sure.
How would that work out maybe in health and nutrition?
Well, understanding, nutrients and how they work in your body, understanding calorie counting, understanding how the body processes and metabolizes, like getting a basic knowledge of those things. And then saying, okay, like, for instance, if you had a weight loss goal or you had a strength training goal, then you kind of outline it and say, this is where I want to head. This is where I am. This is where I want to head. In order to get there, I'm going to have to make some changes, right?
Yeah.
So like with the music bit, you're talking about how, I pick up a guitar, but I don't know what to do with it, right? Or I sit down at the piano and I don't know what to do with it. Our younger son's learning drums right now and he can bang on anything. That's part of the reason why we signed him up for drum lessons is because everything becomes a drumstick and everything becomes some kind of percussion instrument basically. And but you don't, in order to sound good or to make a beautiful like symphony, not cacophony. We mentioned this last time. I need to learn how to do it properly, and I need to learn the proper steps. And so you were asking, I guess I'm getting off tangent a little bit, but you're asking about how to apply this to health and nutrition.
Yeah.
So you're learning the basics, then you're outlining where do I need to go? Like where do I want to aim?
Making like a game plan.
Strategize. Yeah.
And so in a diet, we'll say, maybe designing a diet game plan, you might be pre-planning meals. You have to be a little more intentional about your shopping and things like that.
That's a good point, because even when we podcasted before, I wanted to bring out the intentionality piece. Yeah. There's like a strong level of intentionality needed when you're doing any kind of growth or any kind of change.
That's law number one.
Law number one, intentionality.
Intentionality.
Yeah, you have to... and you have to be, well, I guess the word that came to mind was purposeful. You need to be purposeful in it. So a lot of people, especially when it comes to like dieting, I mean, when we've worked with clients too, who have goals, whether it's exercise or body changes they want to make, it's educating them about how things work. Yeah. Because you may not fully understand how things work properly. So understanding a lot of times is a good part of the battle. And then you make your goal, and then you create mini goals along the way in order to get there.
And these all require discipline.
Yeah, they require discipline.
It requires you to do things that you're not going to want to necessarily do, especially all the time. Right. But that consistency is very important. Yeah. Right?
Or you won't make it.
Yeah, and so it requires discipline to be consistent with these things. Anybody can do it once or twice.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Anybody can deal with something once or twice, but to do it consistently requires discipline.
Yeah,
and
totally.
There's a problem, however.
What's the problem?
Well, let's say that, this happens with New Year's resolutions all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, oh, I want to do this year. I want to eat better, or I want to be able to do a split, or I want to be able to do, 100 push-ups without stopping.
Yeah.
We have these resolutions, and we begin to discipline ourselves for a week.
Right.
2 weeks.
Right.
And then
there's an office party.
Even just that, that overwhelming desire to do something for the new year begins to fade. Right. And
something better came along is usually what happens.
Yeah, something that we desire more.
Yeah.
Whether it be sit on the couch and watch a TV show.
Right.
Or go out to eat.
Right.
Or hang out with friends. Or
right.
play video game, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, we get tested.
And whatever we desire more
wins.
Yeah. That's what we do. We do what we desire the most. And that's a problem when it comes to discipline, right?
Yeah.
We tend to discipline ourselves until we desire to do something more.
Yeah.
Right? Where real discipline has to persevere through that.
Yeah.
And so the problem is what we desire. Right? Desire always wins. Discipline is the fruit of a healthy desire.
Oh, say that again.
Discipline is the fruit of a healthy desire.
I like that.
Right? So, again, if I take it back to diet real quick, whenever you start a new diet, you're not used to it. You're not used to maybe the different kinds of foods you're eating or the quantities that you're eating, whatever kind of diet it may be. It could be different elements, right?
Yeah.
And that there is a time of adjustment that you have to get through.
And it's a little bit of suffering.
Yeah,
often.
there's certainly, suffering required, you know, and that's going to require that discipline to hone in, and you're going to be doing things and eating things that you don't want to eat, basically, right? Yeah. Something that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Whereas discipline forces you to do those things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
But the only way to maintain that power is to have a really strong desire for something greater.
Right.
So I don't necessarily desire this plate of food that I'm eating right now or a plate of food that I'm not eating right now.
Yeah.
But I do desire to be healthy.
Yeah.
Right? And if your desire to be healthy overrides the desire to eat this Butterfinger in front of you, then you won't eat the Butterfinger. But if your desire for the Butterfinger is...
Where'd that come from?
I love Butterfingers, yeah. If the desire for the Butterfinger is greater than your desire to be healthy, then you'll have the Butterfinger, right?
Yeah, and so also... I mean, how do you create healthy desire? That's the question, right? Like, how do you get there? Because you may, in your mind, really want to change something in your life, whether it's, like we're talking about dieting goals, strength training goals, or it might be a really bad habit you have, or a relationship issue. You may want to be a better listener. You may want to achieve, or like you were joking about, learn how to do a split or something like that, But how do you actually choose which desire is healthy? How do you assess whether the desire is healthy, whether it's worth your time and energy? And then also, how do you lock in that desire? Like, you may have a want, but how do you amplify that desire enough that the discipline kicks in?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to determining whether a desire or maybe even a goal is healthy, I usually ask myself a few questions.
Okay.
One is, what's the overall benefit going to be from doing it?
Okay.
You kind of have your pros and cons list, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are the good things about doing this and what are the bad things when it comes to a personal level, right? But then you also have to ask, how is it going to affect other people? Right? How is my desire to do this going to affect those around me? Because, maybe, just to use jiu-jitsu for an example, and to use even your, occupation desires as an example.
Right.
Right before we got married, I was starting to compete and get a little heavier into that in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And that was something that I, enjoyed doing and liked doing.
Yeah.
But when we got married and, started a family, that desire began to fade a little bit, because I desired more to spend time with the family,
Right.
whereas to compete at the level that I would have been competing at requires a lot of time. Training.
Yeah.
And for me, especially at that
Energy.
time, it would have been time, even though I run an academy and I do jiu-jitsu all the time, I would have had to go other places to get that
Right.
kind of training
Right.
with other high-level people, other than just my students, where I have a lot of students who are very tough now. You know, back then I had some, but you know, it was more focused on MMA and things like that as well.
Right.
But whereas in that realm of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu
At that time.
I
Yeah.
would have definitely had to go other places
Right.
and train with other people, you know, down
We
the road.
did a little
an
bit
hour
of
at
that,
least.
but it was...
Yeah, and I did a little bit, but it would have been a very time-consuming thing.
Yeah.
So even though there's nothing wrong with that goal, the goal would have taken away from our family. We were just having children, you know, little ones and all that.
Yeah.
And that's nothing that I regret at all, because my desire was greater
For the family.
for the family than it
Yeah.
was for the accolades of
Right.
being a high-level competitor.
And you were acknowledging that there is a limit. Like, we can't do it all.
Right.
And it can't all be done successfully.
Yeah, to say yes to one thing, you have to say no to another. So you have to
Good point.
prioritize your life.
Right.
And it's the same thing for you, right? Like,
Right,
you
yeah.
had desires for different things, and
Right. I was in a master's program for counseling when we got pregnant with our first child, and you know, we had to make a tough decision. Do I keep putting time and money into this, and it was something I did totally enjoy, or do we have to, you know, reprioritize and shift some things? And so at that time, it was more important for me to focus on the pregnancy and focus on then the business that we had, the martial arts business. And so I just kind of shelved that piece. And, you know, again, don't regret doing it at the time. I mean, if you go back, you wish you could do so many things at once, but the reality is you just can't. You are limited by many, many factors, including time and space. And I think a lot of times we don't acknowledge that we are human and we have these limitations. And if you don't acknowledge that, you'll quickly learn that you can burn out very quickly. You know, if you try to push it, and some people have an exorbitant amount of energy, and that can go on for 5 years or 10 years. But at some point, things give out.
Yeah.
And things have suffered, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. Most often, things suffer in the process.
yeah.
So, you know, I think we both had enough logical brain, you know, synapses going that we were like, we just can't do all of this. We're going to have to make some shifts right now.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, not to say that people can't do both, because you can.
sure.
Just for us, it was, you know, it wasn't necessarily, we were married.
Yeah.
You know, we were thinking maybe children 3 years down the road, and, you know, 3
Right.
months later you were
Yeah.
pregnant, and it wasn't necessarily a planned pregnancy. So
Yeah.
it was unexpected,
Yeah.
and, you know, we just had a lot of ground to cover. you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
basically,
And we did have a whole business. So,
Yeah.
we can put all of our energy into this and grow this and serve the community
Yeah.
in this way while doing our family. Or we can try to keep splitting ourselves now 3 ways versus
Yeah.
the 2 ways. And we just thought, well, if we split 3 ways, you know, we're gonna lose out. They're
Yeah.
gonna lose out.
Yeah.
The community's gonna lose out. I was like, it's just not possible.
So you have to determine whether the goal or the desire is a healthy one by saying, what are the pros and cons for me personally? What are the
consequences.
pros and cons for, you know, those around me, right? That's a very important and considerate thing to do when it comes to your goals and achievements, is to actually
Yeah.
consider how it affects other people as well.
Yeah.
And other people may support you in that, or they may be
Right.
like, you know what, you know, in order to say yes to that, you are going to have to say no to me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just something that will be personal
Right,
for you and those
right.
people around you. It's not always going to be the same answer
always
or
clear-cut.
solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then how do we
Amplify that desire.
amplify
Yeah,
those
that was
desires
the second
when it
piece.
is healthy? You know,
Right.
like
You get
when it
your
is the
healthy
right thing to
desire.
do.
Yeah.
How do we amplify and maintain
Right.
that desire?
Do you want to answer that?
Well, I'm going to say, one way is influence,
Influence, right.
right?
Yeah.
What are some different forms of influence?
So every January, usually, we do kind of say we're going to try a new diet or a new health plan, let's say. It could be supplementation, it could be detoxing, whatever it is. We were trying to grow in taking care of our bodies, right? So we tend to get into documentaries. We tend to get on and find documentaries, or I'll usually pick up a book or two regarding the change that we're thinking about. And so we'll read about it and we'll watch things. And we know film is a really powerful medium to help influence us,
right.
And for me, reading is too. You tend to do audiobooks, so I might be reading and you might be listening to it. But that's sort of how we approach those things. So like if we're interested in making a change, we read up on it or we watch something. And that's been super helpful for us, because then we have the imagery in our head, or we have the thought process, spelled out very clearly in a book. And it just impacts us. It helps us to draw on that later when it might get tough to make that change.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very powerful to watch. Sometimes those documentaries just kind of stir you up.
They do.
And they really increase your desire to make certain changes.
Right.
But there might be people in your life that do that for you too.
Sure. Or podcasts even now. Hopefully we're
might have
doing that.
somebody who you see as a mentor or whatever it may be that kind of just influence you to make. Or they just it increases your desire to do certain things, whatever it may be.
Right. So acknowledging, like, even just when you were a kid, you used to watch Bruce Lee videos, but that helped inspire you along your journey. That wasn't always easy as a martial artist. When you're young, it's fun and exciting, but then you get through harder training, and it's like, well, I have this image of how I want to be or who I want to be, or like a Jean-Claude Van Damme or something like that. Just, very tough people. And so that's kind of cool. And kids do that all the time. They look for heroes. They look for mentors. So as adults, we're just big kids, right? So we're looking for our mentors all the time.
And that creates that influence, that inspiration.
Yeah.
And then sometimes that starts to fade. And it could be sometimes because we're getting away from those things. Like if the desire starts to fade, maybe we should, listen to another book, read another book, watch another documentary, talk to that mentor a little bit more, whatever it may be.
And that's the value of accountability.
Yeah.
Right? So even as we do coaching with people, we're really offering that accountability and that inspiration. We're actually helping them tap into what they already know. Yeah, we're reminding them. And that's a big part of the coaching process as well. So we have that. So we have influence. What's another way that can sort of like amplify that desire?
Sudden impact.
Oh.
So maybe someone has been told that their diet needs to change because it's producing health problems. Right? But let's say they haven't had any serious health problems yet. These are just like things that are foreseen. This is going to happen if you don't change your diet. And so they may not have a strong desire to change their diet, their eating habits.
Everything seems fine.
Maybe, or to exercise, to increase exercise, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But then let's say, heart attack, something happens like that, something a little bit more drastic happens. They go to the doctor and they're like, if you do not change your diet now and increase your exercise, then you're not going to live much longer. Right? Now that, for some people, was boom.
That's it.
Instant transformation, right? Like desire is up the roof to be healthy and to live longer. And so the discipline follows of the diet, the exercise, and all those things. And it's still going to be difficult. But the desire is so strong that it's there. And then, of course, again, having accountability. And even finding, it's nice when we do our diets together because we have each other for strength, right? Or to laugh at when we're messing up.
So education, finding sphere of influence. Sudden impact sometimes does that. Just like a diagnosis or a revelation. And then what's another way to amplify? Is there any other way?
Well, as a person of faith, I rely on prayer a lot. That's knowing the Holy Spirit, and the kind of the job of the Holy Spirit is to actually transform our desires. So whenever I'm struggling with something, I can simply pray that God transform my desire or increase my desire one way or the other, or sometimes decrease a desire. And you know, that's the job of the Holy Spirit. He'll do it. And he's done it plenty of times.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, just to piggyback on that. So I love that we're bringing that up, because I think, you know, if you're a believing person, and you have access to the Holy Spirit and you pray, you know, you can really, that syncs with you. Let's say you have a cocaine addiction or an addiction even to alcohol. You've taken that addiction and you're praying for relief from the desire. Okay? The Spirit listens to that. You, though, through using those substances, have created a biological desire too. Right? There's actually a biological dependency. And so that's where some of the suffering comes through too, when you're actually, you know, detoxing from those substances. Like, you're physically going to suffer in an extreme way oftentimes. And so, you know, but then the prayer comes in not only in help me not to want to do this, but like help me to deal with the level of suffering that's going to come as I separate from this thing, or as I push into a new way of living. So we don't want to underestimate that, you know, there are physical consequences, and that, you know, you may have to do physical things to make those changes. Like, just because we are mind, body, and spirit, we're everything. You know, we're all in one. So usually the best is a combination of education, accountability, providing good influences around you, prayer. You know, it's accessing everything about who we are as humans, and moving forward in a way that's sustainable, and that we see results, you know, pretty quickly, right? Yeah.
So, end of the day, we have discipline and we have desire. And you guys can be the judge for yourselves, but I'm pretty positive that we tend to choose what we desire most. And discipline is only going to have so much power, you know. We can do it for a little while, but when we're trying to discipline ourselves against something that we desire, there's when I say discipline is the ability to force yourself to do something that you don't want to do, but know that you should. There's like a little don't and a big don't. Right? So there's like the little don't is like, you know, I don't really feel like doing this right now, whatever it may be.
We all know that feeling.
But if it's diet, if it's eating a certain way, the big don't is, you know, I don't want to be unhealthy anymore. Right. So that's going to make the little don't easier. So if I desire to be healthy, then it's going to be easier for me to discipline myself to eat a certain way, to exercise a certain way, because I have a really strong desire to be healthy. And that's what kind of carries that discipline through. So just kind of getting that mindset that discipline is the fruit of a healthy desire, I think is a really important concept. And then learning how to transform desires becomes the most important thing when it comes to discipline.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that in your personal growth journey, that's just so important to understand, because it does require discipline to grow. To go through the process of growth. Right. But as long as that desire to grow is really strong, then it makes that discipline, that process, a lot easier. It's always going to be a struggle. It's always going to require perseverance. But being able to actually increase that desire is a very important concept to learn and to understand in order to maintain.
And to know that it does ebb and flow. Your desire will ebb and flow. And having a plan in place when it gets low, what safeguard do I have in place? Do I have a friend to call? Can I pop in a video? Do I have a list of resources? Like, what are you going to do? Having that plan in place also really, really helps, you know, and like you said, prayer is the first line defense. And there's actually a proverb coming to my mind right now that just is popping in my mind. I don't know what it is. I know it's in the book of Proverbs. So maybe I'll try to post it in the
comments or something, but this is also very important when we talked about the healthy desire. The proverb says, desire without knowledge is not good. So think on that for a moment, right? Because desire is good, right? But desire can also lead to very dark and very, I don't know, I'll say wicked places, you know?
Unhealthy.
So desire without knowledge is not good. Knowledge of what? We talked about, even just the simple things of how it affects me personally, how it affects those around me.
Right.
What kind of quantifies something as a healthy desire or not, So, we'll leave you with that.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, guys. And
Thank
just
you.
remember,
yes,
these are just tools.
Yeah.
These are things that we're hoping that you'll gain value from and that you can use to get yourself from where you are
to where you want to be.